What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, Instagram at talklouder_podcast and our website, talklouderpodcast.com. I'm Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and today we've got our special guest Eddie Spaghetti from the Supersuckers and Frank Meyer from the Streetwalkin Cheetahs. They've joined forces for the first time in their long-standing friendship to record a record called Motherfuckin Rock N Roll.
Say it again.
Motherfuckin Rock N Roll.
One more time.
Isn't that fun to say? Motherfuckin Rock N Roll. Yeah. They don't have to worry about placement at Walmart anymore because nobody buys records. But this is a great album. It's Eddie Spaghetti, Frank Meyer, and Brian Forsyth from Kix is on here. Mike Sessa plays drums, longtime Streetwalkin Cheetahs drummer, and a few other guest players. It's a great collection, 10 songs of, there's some power pop, there's some cowpunk, there's some twang, there's some glam. It's a really, really good record. It's been in heavy rotation at my house for 2 or 3 weeks now.
I think what makes that a great record is the fact that these guys have known each other a long time, and they're both kind of coming from a punk thing, but they both love glam rock. And what we mean by glam rock is Hanoi Rocks and stuff like that. Not, an old Queen kind of glam and the Sweet and stuff like that. Yeah. And old new wave when punk rock and new wave were kind of confusing to the kids, And I think that lends itself into the making of these songs. Of course, this was all written sort of on the lam, so to speak, because of COVID. Over emails and phone calls and things like that. But the fact that they had a slew of rock stars come in and lay down tracks or respectively lay tracks in their personal home studios during lockdown and forward the tracks to them for mixing, etc. They got the guitar player from the Knack and the guitar player for Kix, and they cover a Knack song and a Kix song. And what?
Yeah.
I mean...
Exactly.
That's enough to prick your ears up.
Homer Simpson said, "Less artsy, more fartsy."
Yeah,
right.
I should premise the show. Well, maybe I don't have to, but I'm going to. I wanted you guys to know that Jason had a gig in Dallas last night, so he's fresh off of 4 hours of sleep. And I was out with Nashville Pussy last night. So
excellent.
So yeah.
So you're a little tore up.
Yeah, you look like you were out with Nashville Pussy last night.
Just wearing the same shit.
So. Yeah, exactly. I just put a hat on.
Right. Eddie and I hung out with them recently. We all played a big festival down here in Southern California together, and boy, oh boy, did we have fun. It was almost like a whole weekend reunion because everyone's been away for so long on COVID and hadn't been touring. Normally the Supersuckers and Nashville Pussy do a lot of touring together, and we do a lot of shows with both those bands, and no one had seen each other in a while, except Eddie and I had seen each other. We made this record together, but everyone else was sort of like seeing old friends,
Let's jump into that. Cool. Tell us how that kind of came about and where you guys were in your headspace when you said, "Hey, we might as well just finish this," right?
And who came up with this awesome title? For those of you who aren't familiar, Eddie Spaghetti from the Supersuckers and Frank Meyer from the Streetwalkin Cheetahs, they just put out this record, collaborated. It's called Spaghetti and Frank and Spaghetti. And the album is titled Motherfuckin Rock N Roll. I'm just the messenger, folks. But there you go. Tell us how that came together. You guys have known each other for a long time, but I think this is the first time you actually put a full record out together. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess the impetus for us working together started at the beginning of COVID when we were shut down. I was trapped in Amsterdam trying to get a flight home, and
you say it like that's a bad thing.
Well, there's worse places to be stuck for sure. But, we were out by the airport with no transportation. So it wasn't as glamorous as being at a coffee shop or something cool like that.
Right.
But we were stuck there, and I wrote this song called Shit's Fucked about the whole situation. And I came home with it in my phone, just like a little acoustic recording. And Frank had reached out to me about singing on a song that he written about the whole COVID thing. And he had like this all-star We Are the World sort of a hands across your face sort of a thing with all these, quasi celebrities singing on it. And I was involved in that. And so that got us talking, and he asked me, do you have anything kicking around? And I had this little song on my phone, and I sent it over to him, and he turns it into this full on like piece of rock music. And I was pretty impressed with that. And I was like, wow, that's cool. You did that all at home? And he's like, yeah, I sure did. And so we kind of fleshed that song out and kind of farted that one out. And then we just kind of kept working together.
Yeah, it's a great record, and I've been a fan of both of your respective bands for a number of years. But Frank, I have to say, I think this is my favorite thing you've done since the Streetwalkin Cheetahs, and I'm not that's not downplaying any of your other multiple
That's a big deal.
things.
That's kind of a lot.
Yeah, that's coming from me, if you put any value in that, but but I love it, man. I've been listening to it since you sent it to me, and I find things on here on every listen that that I hear for the first time, and I really enjoy it. It reminds me at times of a lot of bands that I love. I hear a little Supergroup in here. I hear a little Sons of Hercules in here. I hear a little River City Rebels in here. I love the fact that there's so much brass in the music. I think people downplay wind instruments and maybe don't always consider them rock and roll. But if you go back to like Little Richard or Michael Monroe and somebody that's just honking that sax, man, it totally makes the song.
I got one word for you: Aerosmith.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Songs are tough, man.
I think both
Top.
Eddie and I are
ZZ Top.
I think Eddie and I are both fans of all that sort of 70s classic hard rock stuff. So certainly all that has a bearing on probably both of our bands as well as this record. But I think maybe what makes this record a little different than our other ones and some of that stuff you're hearing where there's all this layers is that normally the way my bands have operated up until pretty recently, and I think the way Eddie's band has operated is, you write some songs and demo them up, and, maybe some folks are writing them and you write them together, or they're written on the road or at home. But you get your songs together, and then you go into a studio and you spend however many days or weeks or months or whatever your project takes. You make a record, and then you kind of go and do live shows to support that record. In this case, because live shows shut down and we were both lucky enough to have home recording situations and we didn't live too far from each other, so we were actually able to get together and keep our kind of, the circle closed when everyone was flattening the curve and trying to stay away from everyone. We were able to sort of eke by and keep being creative during that time, and probably spent more time on this record than neither one of us normally would, because I feel like my overall approach to making a record is kind of like get in, get out, get it while it's hot. Everything should be first or second take, get all the guys sort of together, get that live vibe. This is not that record until the end. It was basically me and Eddie making it together in home studios until we got to a point where we were like, okay, we got 10 good songs. We could get my drummer, Mike Sessa, in. We could get our sax player, Jeff Yeaton, in. We got Brian from Kix, Brian Forsythe, and Burton Navarre from the Knack. And we started layering in some other levels, and all of a sudden we had this really, really big, full, rich record. But it's because we spent a year making it. I don't think either one of us normally would ever even want to spend a year making a record. If someone said to me, you want to spend a year making 10 songs? I'd be like, no, it takes me like a week. Let's move on.
It's too bad that you had time to kill. Is all.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Well, I mean, it's a weird situation, but I would call this a silver lining to an otherwise shitty year, because I don't think Eddie wanted to be sitting out being on tour. And I had a day job that I got laid off from, plus my rock and roll live career being put on hold. So at first the whole thing was a big giant bummer, but this is just one of these ways that artists carve out silver linings out of, social unrest, essentially.
Off topic, how many books did you write during the lockdown? You have like a dozen out right now.
I mean, do you really want to know the answer to that? I've got three essentially book pitch outlines that me and Amit Zappa have been out there pitching, and I've also been working with Amit on his book. So a bunch, Jason.
Not surprised in that. I think that's great because you have a
zero for me.
Beautiful brain.
Well, that's not true, Eddie. Haven't you been sort of actually starting a book in the loosest sense of that term? I believe.
Well,
I'm
supposed to be.
You're supposed to be. Yeah. Put it this way: someone thinks Eddie's writing a book for them. Whether that's happening or not is entirely a different situation. But I know it's at least one person who was like, "Oh yeah, Eddie's writing a book." I was like, "He is."
Hey, Eddie, I think I know a ghostwriter for you.
No,
yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. Believe me, I think Eddie and I have spent plenty of time together. I don't know that he's like, you know what I need more in my life right now is more Frank Meyer.
More Frank Meyer.
Yeah, he's definitely among that crew that's had.
Is there a knob on his Eddie? Is there a knob on your amp that says Frank Meyer? You turn up Frank Meyer.
You gotta just dab that knob in there. It's like
you don't need. It's not a turn up knob. It's a turn down knob. I'm always starting at 10, and then sometimes you just got to dial me back a little bit.
Spring loaded. Just turn it down, it goes back up.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, Frank, you mentioned that the album has 10 songs on it, and I wanted to bring that up too because I think it's perfectly paced. I think that's another reason I like it so much. It's like it leaves you wanting more. It's like when you listen to all those great albums from the 70s, the Aerosmiths, the Black Sabbaths or whatever, they all clocked in at 9 or 10 songs before CDs made everybody able to overkill something. And I think the pacing of the album does it a great service as well. The songs are great, but I love the fact that 10 songs later, I'm repeating it again, and I don't have time to really get bored with it.
Yeah, I feel like that was a big problem when the CDs started making it. I had all this extra space available, and I had to, talk myself down from the mountain of trying to fill all that space. And
right.
just because you have it available doesn't mean you need to use it.
Amen.
Exactly.
And there was a couple other song ideas we were sort of toying with that we just kind of at some point we were like, nah, this 10 seems like they all fit right in with each other, and it didn't seem like everything else seemed to almost like upset the balance a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think some of it too is that early on we decided on the covers that we wanted to do. And in a weird way, I feel like that sort of steered the whole project because, Eddie's sort of said throughout his career, My Sharona is such a great pop song. I mean, who doesn't say that? I've said that before. It's such a great pop song. It's almost like untouchably great. And which is why when we had all this time off, we were like, fuck it, let's just give it a whack. And then we were able to get the guitarist from the Knack on it. And Kix is a band. I know Brian, I know both you guys are big Kix fans, and Eddie and I are a fan of those early Kix records, especially. And that song we chose, Heartache, which we ended up getting Brian, the guitarist from Kix on, is in that pocket of sort of a My Sharona-y early 80s, one of those snappy little riff songs. And when we knew we were doing two of those, it gave the overall thing like, okay, all the songs then got to have like some good power pop hooks. Like it sort of steered the thing away from being too punk rock or too garagey because like the songs had to fucking stand up to My Sharona.
Yeah, yeah. So there are some covers. Obviously, My Sharona is the most well known, but some of them are a little more obscure. You mentioned the Kix song.
I mean, those are the only two covers. The rest are all originals.
Oh, okay. So tell me, how did you get the guitar player from the Knack to be involved?
Well, I have this buddy of ours who does a lot of our website stuff, and this fellow named Jim Bellata, and he's worked with the Knack. So he has a relationship with the guys from the Knack and knows Burton, and was telling me, I can get you Burton if you want. I was like, go ahead, dude. Let's see what he's got. And he was up for it and he did it. And it was real cool. The funny thing is we had a guitar solo on there already in place. It's probably a little more ripping. It's by some dude in Sweden, right?
It was Dennis Post from Warrior Soul plays a rhythm guitar track on there, and the very first small solo is both me and Dennis sort of trading licks. but then we gave the big one to Burton. But we didn't know if we were getting Burton until the last minute. So I told Dennis, like, just throw me down a solo. And he fucking nailed it, like knocked it out of the park. And it was so good that when we got Burton's, we were almost like, geez, I don't know. I mean, it's great, but like but I mean, of course we use Burton's, and Burton's is smoking. And what we did is, you know, in the end, it has everyone on it because there's a little bit of me, a little bit of Dennis, a little bit of Burton. But man, Dennis, that original solo he did was just smoking.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty huge feather in your cap if you get the guy that actually, you know, performed the song originally.
Well, same thing with Brian
For
Forsythe.
sure.
Yeah,
you know, we're both big fans of Brian's, but Eddie has worked with Brian because didn't you produce a Rhino Bucket record that Brian's on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That was a real thrill to get to. I was such a fan of Brian Forsythe, man. I used to stare at that first Kicks record, or maybe the second Kicks record, the one where they're all standing on the front.
They're cool kids.
Yeah,
cool
look at the way Brian Forsythe's jeans used to fit him. You know, it's just like, this guy's a fucking rock star.
Yeah.
And there I was, you know, all these years later, producing the record that he's on. It was a real thrill, and just having a relationship with somebody that I looked up to like that as a kid. You know, it's real cool.
Yeah, you know, that's another name on the record that obviously caught my attention. And I know you guys are fans, but I thought it was great that you worked with him. And of course, you know, he's in Rhino Bucket. So, you know, besides Kicks, you know, he has Rhino Bucket on his resume. And he not only played on he played on a couple tracks on this record, right?
He's all over it, actually.
Yeah. So how did that start? Did you ask him to be on one, and then it just kind of spilled over and just never stopped, or how did he end up on so many songs?
I mean,
we always kind of knew we wanted to have him on more than just the one song. So I just kind of kept badgering him, like, here's some more songs. When are you going to get your stuff on there? Come on, let's go. He takes a long time to do it. You know, he's
Did he
particular.
Did he record on his gear at home? Or?
Yeah,
okay,
both
cool.
him and Burton, just because that was still in the middle of the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, at that point, I think Kicks weren't touring. You know, obviously, Knack don't tour anymore, but both those guys essentially did their parts to mixes we sent them, and then sent us the parts and we flew them in. Whereas Eddie and Mike Sessa, Jeff, we were all together in some different capacities in person. You know,
you ever notice how Brian? He's either posting food porn or him sitting on an airplane.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
I had to stop following his Instagram feed because I just cannot take another shot of eggs and steak.
Right.
Well, but see, that's the thing. It's not just calling it food porn is too general. What he's really into is duck eggs and red meat, and that's it. And I love Brian, but by the way, a duck egg is fine, and red meat, sure. But like, he'll post stuff where it's like a duck egg and a steak covered in meat sauce, covered in bacon bits with a side of bacon, and I'm just like, holy shit!
How does he stay that skinny if he's eating all that?
It's some weird diet, but I don't know. It doesn't, you know.
I think he's made a deal with the Dark Lord. I mean, he's like 1,000 years old, and he looks 20. So
he does. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's working for him.
And he's probably the nicest guy in the room when you're with him too.
He's such a sweetheart, and he's such a professional. Like, he is a really good guitar player. Like, every time I've been around him, and just everything he plays, it's perfect. It's hard to choose. You know,
he's in love with his guitar. He really is in love. He is really in love. He told me one time, and then I'm doing this, and you know, it's probably not going to be that great of a payday, but I like to play. And then I think he said it again. I really like to just play. So it's obvious.
The album, it's one of those ones where I have a new favorite song every time I listen to it, which is the mark of a great album, by the way. We all know that, but I really like Knock My Teeth Out. And Top Shelf Shame is the I love that song, man, and it's so melancholy, and it's got that twang to it or something. It's not my usual cup of tea, but the way you guys do it, it's just the music fits the sentiment of the song really well. It's just awesome. I love it.
Yeah, that one is my favorite track. Like, the way it all came together. That's my favorite one. Like, that's the most realized song. I feel like it's just the whole spaghetti Western vibe of it is real cool.
Yeah.
Although, what's funny, Eddie, if you recall, before we hit the Kitten Robot Studios, that was the one you were like the most worried about. You remember at one point you were like,
Totally.
I don't know, man, that song is really not coming together. And I was like, just wait till we get in the studio, it'll come together. And then somehow when the drums came on, and then we redid some acoustics, and we redid a few things in this that were done at my place, a little lo-fi, and we kind of got better versions of things. And all of a sudden the song just like came to life. But there was a few songs that, like, until we did that last phase, that one and Barroom Brawl, like, they were fine. They just didn't seem like they were as locked in until Mike Sessa jumped in and locked all those drums in. And then all of a sudden we stacked the horns on and things started locking in that almost needed live drums that just weren't quite happening when it was all to like a click and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's why I like Top Shelf Shame so much, is because I was so disappointed in it originally. Like when I made it up, I thought, well, this is a cool little song. I like this. And then when we recorded it, I was like, But then at the last minute, it came together really nice.
I love it.
I'll tell you the funny thing, Dave, about Knock My Teeth Out is that I wrote that song after I actually knocked my teeth out. I had played a Cheetahs gig, and I'd already basically chipped a tooth at a gig long ago, bad enough that at some point I needed to have it capped. And then I got this cap in, and just one of the very last gigs before everything shut down, the microphone popped me and the cap came out. And I was like, and then right after that, I lost my health insurance, FYI. I went on for like months and months with missing a tooth. But when it first happened and they pulled they basically carve your tooth down to the thing that they're going to cap it with. I came home with a missing tooth and a big mouthful of Novocaine, wrote and demoed the song and sang the vocal track while on Novocaine missing a tooth. So that's why it's very punk rock. Because I'm like barely able to pronounce any of the words. But the song came together and we turned it into sort of a duet to us. But the original version was literally recorded right after I knocked my teeth out.
Well, now I like it even more. I mean, this is great stuff, man. Inspiration comes from all different places.
I have to do the shameless plug here and say, so you had literally broken teeth.
I'm
sorry. So sorry.
That was good.
It was coming.
So another one of my favorites is You Can't Take It Back. I love that song. I love the lyrics in it. I love the sentiment. I always love a song that expresses something that I would like to say, but somebody else is saying it better because they spent the time with the words and they really captured the feeling and the emotion. And I love that song because it's sort of a self-deprecating sort of type song or whatever. Tell me a little bit about that one.
That one I wrote with the original version because a lot of these, like basically there was a couple songs that Eddie and I wrote together or collaborated on, and then we each came to the table with a few other songs that we wrote or had been, had lying around essentially. And Can't Take It Back is one that I wrote with this guy named Chip Wilson, who I worked with at a previous gig. And Chip was just this really good guitar player and really good songwriter, but he wasn't necessarily like a pro musician the way that Eddie and I are. He doesn't have a band or an album out. He's not up there, hawking his musical wares. But we had written a bunch of tunes together, and that was one of them. And the idea generally is I wanted to keep it sort of vague enough as to what it was about. So if it felt like it was a song about like, love, you could plug that emotion into it. If you felt like it was a song about saying something that you wished you could take back, you could plug that into it. What it's actually about is I had this boss essentially at a former job who was a complete bag of dicks and just could not been a bigger, more abusive, bully essentially. And he and I had gotten into some heated shit, like after work in a parking lot, like one of the only times where I've ever actually almost like punched out my fucking boss or anyone that I've ever worked, or anyone for that matter. You guys know me. I'm a chill dude. Yeah. This guy was so it was so ugly. And so we had some words and he freaking, he was my boss. So he took me to HR and had me written up and like, it got ugly. And I'll tell you this. Another silver lining to the pandemic is that I'm confident I would have been fired from that job for clocking that motherfucker, or that he would have essentially had me removed for knowing that it was it was getting bad. And so, so that song is actually me talking to that dude, basically saying like, I said that shit and I can't take it back and I don't want to take it back, you know?
Yeah.
And even at the end when it's like, there's a time machine, all that shit, it's basically saying like, yeah, if you could give me a time machine, fuck, I ain't taking it back, baby.
I think that's why I like it, because I think it's an emotion we've all shared at one time, whether it's a boss or a, boyfriend, girlfriend, teacher, whatever, some authority figure, or just anyone in your life,
That's what it was written from that point of view. But I also kind of thought that it should work as a relationship song too. So I kept some of it a little on the vague side purposely, just so that you could plug in your own thing. Because I didn't know that everyone's going to have that backstory that I would have. Hating your boss that much,
Yeah, but I feel like it's a tick if you write lyrics or do your best to come up with the best shit that is going to evoke emotion. It's like a tick. That dude needed to be told, and the way that you needed to tell it was in your song,
right?
And so that's the best way to share. That's why I think David reacted. I'm sure it's the way I would react. Honestly, I haven't heard the record enough to grab on anything yet, but dude, it's a tick. That dude had to be told. It's unfortunate that he crybabied you all the way to HR and had you,
Yeah, no doubt.
There's a line.
That's almost chicken. That's almost chicken shit.
Oh, believe me. I mean, literally, dude, this guy, we like had it out, and then we kind of calmed down. And he's like, man, I'm glad you and I, we talked about this man to man. We're totally good. And then he literally the next morning went to HR and brought me in, and the whole thing. And I was just like, you motherfucker, you goddamn backstabbing son of a bitch. You know what I mean?
Chicken,
but I still couldn't say any of these things. I had to sit there in a meeting and just be like, yeah, I guess I am pretty terrible. Yeah, I guess I just don't listen to authority. I guess this guy is totally right, and I'm just,
There's a line in that song that I love. It's you popped all my balloons, and I love that because a lot of the song is more serious in its tone, but. And popping your balloons is something a kid would be upset about, right?
Well, and that's because I wanted that imagery to also sort of like throw in like, this is also stupid. Like, we're just little kids fucking on the play yard. Like, give me a break.
Yes.
Like,
I like that. I like that take on it, though, that you're being like fucking ridiculous, but at the same time, and Mellencamp, I fight authority song, right? And authority always wins. That's a play into the whole thing too, because you could have clocked the guy and just walked away.
Yeah, but I would have lost my job, possibly my career. And if I clocked him, if he called HR on me for raising my voice, and imagine if I put my hands on him, it would have been a police incident.
You played it right, but usually you embellish the lyric, and you kind of didn't. You used it as gas for the rest of the emotion. Right. So that's great.
Tell me about the song Tattletail. That's another standout for me. Is that you, Eddie?
Yeah, that's a song that I made up with a buddy of mine, and I think we might have actually still been in high school when I made that up. It's from like my first real band that I had in high school, and
so that was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, just last year. It wasn't in the 1900s at all.
No.
Yeah, so it's an old song, but I always liked it and thought it never really got released or anything. So there's always gold to be mined in the past.
Yeah, that's another. I mean, I could just go through track by track. I mean, that's why I said, Frank, I think it's my favorite thing that you've been involved in since the Streetwalkin Cheetahs. It's 10 songs of just they're all great. There's power pop, there's cowpunk, there's just straight ahead rock and roll. The barroom brawl song kind of has the Cheap Trick, She's Tight riff in there. It's a great album. So who titled this thing? Because obviously you weren't marketing this.
Well,
the title, by the way, folks, is Motherfuckin Rock N Roll. That's the title of the album. So you
Thank
find
God.
it.
Thank God it's called
we had
that.
that song already. We had the song already, and when we were going to title the record, we're trying to come up with something clever or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? this record, this song should be the first song, and it should be named after the first song on the record. It's so simple. It's always the best way to do it, you know, and so it has the motherfucker in it. So what? No one's buying the records anymore anyway, so no one gives a shit.
Yeah, you
and
don't have to.
I agree. I think the record is real cool, and I'm really happy with it. I've actually listened to it a lot, and you know, I only do that with you know, stuff that I really dig. So I feel like it's a real celebration of all the things that Frank and I like about rock music.
Yeah. I love that you say that, because a lot of times artists are so involved with the music that by the time they get done with the album, they're sick of it and they don't really, you know, give it any, you know, further listening until a year or two later, maybe come back and sort of revisit it. But the fact that you're saying that sort of validates what I've been saying all along. I just think it's 10 great songs, one after another. So.
Right. I think because it came together so at the 11th hour, everything really sort of gelled. And so I'm still kind of surprised at how good it is. You know, it's still it's fresh to me. I didn't labor over it so long to where I'm sick of it.
Yeah. So and I want you guys to talk about the brass players on this album, because I think they add so much to the songs. Who's playing sax and who's playing?
It's just one guy. It's Jeff Yaten. He's in the Streetwalkin Cheetahs. He's a guy that when the Cheetahs started, you know, we were together in the 90s into the early 2000s, and that's when Eddie and I originally met and did a lot of shows on the road together. Cheetahs broke up for a few years, and when we got back together, we'd always would have sax players like get up, like Angelo Moore used to sit in with us a lot, and this guy Vince Megaruni from Mike Watt's band, and different folks that would jump, like Aaron from Prima Donna, but no one was ever like a member, and it was never a regular thing. It was like just kind of, but we did put it on the record, so it was kind of like that sound, that mix of sax with punk rock. We met Jeff along the way, right when we first started doing some touring again around 2014 or 15. And he was just a chill dude, and he lived near us and easy to work with, always available, never started any shit, wasn't an asshole, wasn't a drunk, wasn't a drug addict. And in a weird way, and I'm sure, Eddie, you know this dynamic, sometimes having someone in your band or getting in your organization that's just like a way chill dude, and it adds a little balance. Somehow, like, we'd all been together for so long that in a weird way, adding this fifth member that was a new guy with this different energy and didn't have all of the backstory together like we did was a good thing for us, and it added a different sound to the band. So when Eddie and I, and he's all over the Cheetahs' last record, One More Drink. He's on every song. So we made him a full-time member. So when Eddie and I started making this record, there was a few songs right away that we were like, wow, barroom brawl. If we're going to do this sort of rockabilly sort of vibe, you know, it's got to have big horns and stuff. And we just, once we had him on one song, it's sort of like Brian. We just were like, hey, you want to play on this one and this one and this other one? You know, we just kept throwing him songs.
Milking it.
But he would just stack his parts. It's all him.
Well, it definitely adds a lot to the record. I think that's one of the things I like about it is it's got this, it's rock and roll, but there's a lot going on, you know, as far as you don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because I'm a heavy metal guy. I don't always think of wind instruments as being part of the picture. You know, once in a while you hear Steven Tyler blow a harmonica or something, or Michael Monroe or something like that. But playing sax, but you know, if you think about it and you listen to those songs, that adds so much energy and vibe to it. It really kind of adds the extra kick that puts it over the top. You know, makes it exciting and fun.
It gives it that glam rock sort of vibe that I really like.
Maybe that's what I'm trying to explain here. But yeah, it definitely it adds something to it. So I wanted to give a shout to him. And Mike Sessa is your longtime drummer in Streetwalkin Cheetahs, right?
Yeah, Mike's been in the band, in the Cheetahs, since almost day one. My brother was the original drummer in the first handful of gigs, but as soon as we started making any recordings or going on the road, Mike was the drummer and has been ever since. And he was in the Joneses, he was in the Vice Principals, he played with Rosie Flores, he played with Cracker. He's filled in actually for a little while for Reverend Horton Heat, I think, when their original drummer was out for a few gigs or whatnot. Wow. He's just been around forever and a great drummer, and he can play any style, and the guy is just a rock. And much like I was saying about Jeff, our sax players, Mike's got a very chill personality. Like, he is there to play good drums. He is not there to party. He's not there really even to socialize and fuck around. Like, he's a very businessy kind of guy. I think when I was younger and more, like it always bothered me when I was younger that Mike was so detached from everything, because it's like I was always so like passionate. It's like, I want my guys to be like a gang and blah, blah, blah. And now as I've gotten older, like, I really appreciate Mike's like business like sort of thing. And I'm kind of like, I don't need my guys to be a gang. Get the fuck away from me. Just let's come in, make the music, and then go home. I got stuff to do. You know what I mean? So it's like, now I love that Mike just comes in and he is there to lay down the goddamn beat. No muss, no fuss. Delightful man to be around, but he's not there to party and jizzy J. He doesn't want to go out after the show. He doesn't give a fuck about what you're doing he doesn't care if you're famous. You know what I mean? Like, he's just there to do the job.
Does this sound familiar, Jason?
Yeah, I think that there's a time. I think that there's
That's
a
Jason.
time.
That's
yeah,
Jason.
That's all biz. So the there comes a time when you notice that you need to be surrounding yourself with people like that, because you want the record and the song to be and the set to have this monster thing go on.
And professionalism, I mean, like, it's okay to have a little reckless energy and a little punk rockiness, but like, I don't want to go up there and think that these guys that I'm playing with don't know the fucking material, or the drummer might drop the ball or some shit like that. I mean, I'm used to, much like Eddie, like, I've played with a lot of great drummers. Like, I can't play with shitty drummers anymore. It's just, I can't. I won't be in a band.
Well, if your drummer sucks, your band sucks.
Right.
Totally. The good thing about Mike is that when he was in the studio, like, I could be really direct with him and say, this is not working. It needs to be more like this. And instead of getting butthurt about it and being all attached to his part, he's like, oh, okay, what do I got to do? He's super pro, and he's not emotionally attached to what he's playing, which is, like Frank said, like, when you're young, that's what you want. You want everybody all emotionally invested in the music that you're making together. But as you get older, you just want people to do what you want them to do.
Now I'm like,
and Mike is really good at that.
Yeah, now I'm like, hey, don't be so emotional, man. Just fucking, it's just music. Before it was like it's music, man. It's music. And I'm just like, hey, man, we all know. I mean, that's, I think, one of the reasons why Eddie and I probably enjoyed working on this project, was that, like, both of us do have this mentality. I hate band meetings. I really don't even want to be at rehearsal, except obviously rehearsal's necessary to do certain, you're going to make songs and records, you got to rehearse. But like, I kind of just want to show up and have everyone know the parts. And sure, if, there might be a little, it all comes together. But like, I don't know, man. Like, we barely would talk about stuff. Like, I'd be like, hey, want to make a video? He'd be like, sure. I'd be like, hey, we're going to do it like this. He'd be like, that's good. What about this? I'd go, sure. The songs we liked are the ones on the record. The song that we didn't like didn't make the record. There wasn't any arguments or band meetings. We didn't have to fucking talk about shit. It usually was like a text or a quick phone call, and then we'd move on to the next thing.
That's called finishing each other's sentences.
Right.
Yeah, that's important, man.
I've been working like that for so long. I forgot that there were even bands that still had band meetings, and the Supersuckers haven't had a real rehearsal in 20 years,
Right.
So we just we just have this telepathy, where we're just like, this is what needs to happen. Everybody knows, and Frank and I have the same sort of relationship. It's real easy, and it has to be in order to work with me. If you make it difficult on me, I'm not going to work with it. So
yeah. Eddie, I wanted to ask you, the Supersuckers are based out of Seattle, is that correct?
Yeah, that's kind of where we got our start. Nobody lives there anymore.
Okay. Well, the question that I wanted to ask is, you were around, obviously when the whole grunge explosion started. So what was it like from your perspective, being in, the Supersuckers doesn't fit that mold. So you're in a band that's in a scene that is a different type of music that's gaining national attention. What was that like from your perspective, just sort of watching that, blow up right there on your home turf?
Well, it was the bottom line of it. It was thrilling. It was really cool to see guys you've hung out with on a regular basis getting on MTV and becoming like rock stars, and you just thought, well, it's probably going to happen to us if we just keep doing what we do. Of course, it never did, but it was still, when we started this band in Tucson, Arizona, and we moved to Seattle in 1989, thinking we're going to be the best band they've ever seen. Who's from Seattle? Nobody. And we get there, and there's all these bands already going on. You know, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Mudhoney, all these bands are already there, and we had no idea. And we were like, we were the interlopers on their scene, you know. But everybody was super welcoming to us, and you know, it was a real supportive environment. It wasn't all backbitey and gossipy. It was just everybody's real happy for everybody else, and everybody was equally shocked that, you know, there was such a spotlight on Seattle at the time. And, you know, there was a lot of negativity came out of it, you know, with people getting hooked on drugs and all that sort of stuff. But that was going to happen whether they got famous or not, I suppose. But
hey, Eddie,
yeah, it was.
I've always wondered, why did you guys go to Seattle? Because at that point, there wasn't like a big scene in Seattle when you first got there. There was a scene, but like why Seattle versus LA, or San Francisco?
Yeah, the move for a band from Tucson was to go to LA. If you were like a real band, you would go to LA and try to make it there. But we were so contrary and just, you know, young and dumb. We literally flipped a coin between Seattle and New Orleans. And Seattle won the coin toss, and we moved to Seattle. We had a buddy who had moved up to Seattle, and he told us how great it is to live there. Like, you can wear your leather jacket into June here, dude. It's awesome. You know, and living in the desert, that sounded really appealing. So
yeah,
it seemed so opposite to where we were living that that was the appeal more than, you know, thinking we'd go there and make a mark for ourselves or anything.
Had you guys gone to LA? Had the Black Supersuckers or whatever your version of the band was at that point ever gone and like done LA gigs and even tried your hand on the, you know, the Sunset Strip or the Raji scene or whatever at that time?
No, the band I had before we started the Supersuckers was this glam rock band. The band that Tattletail came from was this band called Thai Pink. And we had done some LA gigs, and it's kind of, we got interest from an A&M, A&R guy, and it was the same guy who wound up signing Soundgarden. And he was looking at us and Soundgarden at the same time, and we were like, "Oh, here it is! It's going to happen," and it didn't. He chose Soundgarden over us. But
who did you play? Sorry, guys, I did now. This piques my interest. Do you remember who did Thai Pink play with in LA? Like, what bills were you on? Were you opening up for like Tough and Pretty Boy Floyd, or were you on like the Hangman Lions
Junkyard,
and Junkyard scene? Like, what was Thai Pink doing at that time?
yeah, we were more aligned with the Hangman, but we actually did a show with Fishbone, I think, in LA.
Wow.
And then we did a show with the Hangman as well. And the Hangman came to Tucson and played. And yeah, we were really big into the Hangman.
Yeah.
Still am.
Yeah, they rule. Totally rule. I love that band.
Brian Small's a god.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything about him. His voice, his lyrics, his persistence.
Right. Yeah.
And still putting out great stuff. That Cactusville record is amazing.
Totally.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain about the whole Seattle thing, because I know that, you know, Pearl Jam obviously became huge, and Eddie Vedder's this huge rock star. But I've always appreciated the fact that Eddie Vedder is still very supportive of. He's been supportive of the Supersuckers. I know he's a big supporter of Zeke, and you don't usually find guys at that level that will still, you know, attach their name to their roots and their punk rock barroom band days and all that stuff. So I've always thought that was really cool.
Yeah, Eddie Vedder has been a great friend and a super supportive guy, and I wish I liked Pearl Jam. Yeah. I don't like that music. It doesn't speak to me at all. It never has. And when they got famous, I was like, I don't even hear songs. It doesn't, the way they do it, it just sounds, everything sounds made up. I know music is made up. I know we're all making it up, but theirs always really sounded made up. Like it never sounded finished to me. It still doesn't. I just don't get it.
Wow. So do you feel like it's lacking emotion or something that makes it genuine, or what?
It sounds to me like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Like somebody's making up the guitar part and somebody else is making up words that go with it. Like it doesn't sound like it's coming from one singular mind, which I like when I hear a song. Like I want to hear, when you hear Cheap Trick, you hear, okay, that's Rick Nielsen. Rick Nielsen's making all that shit up, and it's coming from his perspective. His ZZ Top. It's all Billy Gibbons. You just hear like it's coming from one guy, and very seldom does it work where you can tell like it's okay. A guitar player made up this riff, and the singer's doing this on top of it, and it just the Rolling Stones do a good job of that, but. I don't think it works for everybody. And I mean, it's just my perception.
No,
obviously, I'm in the minority. I'm totally wrong because
I really like
everybody loves those guys.
I really like the band that they were before that, Mother Love Bone, and I thought that going just to what you said, Eddie, that was a band where like that was Andrew Wood's vision. Like he had this total Freddie Mercury kind of meets David Lee Roth sort of vibe, love it or meets Elton John. And I felt like that band had just so much personality. And then when they came out with Vedder, some of the riffage was there and stuff, but it just, like you said, it sort of became this jam band sort of vibe in a way. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like
it sounds like a jam band to me.
Yeah, that's the best way, Eddie, when you were describing that. It sounds like, well, here's my doodle and here's my doodle. Let's stack them on top of each other and make records out of each other's doodles, just dog pile doodle.
Exactly.
There's
dog pile doodle. Yeah,
there's a lyric in there somewhere.
Yeah, I like dog
pile doodle.
Yeah,
that's the title of the next Frank and Spaghetti album,
or the next Pearl Jam record.
Well, yeah. But jam band is basically dog pile doodle.
Yeah. So, since we've got Jason and Eddie in the room today, I want to also talk about this. There's a glare on my camera.
Which actually, I'm on that too.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
All three of you. Yeah. So I'm referencing the Heirs of the Dog album, which is basically a tribute album, I guess you would call it, to Nazareth. And obviously the title is alluding to the Hair of the Dog record. So basically a bunch of musicians got together and remade the Hair of the Dog classic Nazareth album. So tell me a little bit about how you guys got involved in this and your participation in it and how that came about.
Well, basically, this fellow Joey Killingsworth reached out to me a while back about it. And he was so persistent that I just finally relented. But it's the second time I worked with him. He did this Black Oak, Arkansas tribute record before, and I was involved in that. And, and then he asked me to do this. And I was like, well, if I can do Love Hurts, I'll do it. And he's like, okay, done. So, and then he got Ryder to sing a duet with me, and it turned it into this really beautiful thing. Like it was just me singing it at home on my computer, and I just sent it off to him. I didn't really think about it. And it came back to me. It was like, wow, this is actually a real good thing. Same sort of thing that happened with Frank. I was like, wow, you guys are doing really good shit over there. It's a pleasure to be involved with that.
I met Joey through Thor, actually, the heavy metal guy Thor, because I had produced a Thor record last year that Joey sang some backing vocals on. So I met him through that project. And then I'm also good friends with Ryder and Blaine from Nashville Pussy. So out of the blue, when they were doing Love Hurts, and they also appear on the song Hair of the Dog, she called me up and she goes, hey, you know that chorus in the Son of a Bitch chorus and Hair of the Dog? And I go, yeah. And she goes, can you hit those notes? And I was like, yeah, I can hit those notes. She goes, okay, can you jump on this song? Because none of us can hit the note. And so I literally on that song, the only thing you hear me on is, son of a bitch. I like that. I basically just I doubled Blaine, and they just used me to sort of hit these fucking crazy ass notes. And then, on the other one, Love Hurts, I think I sang the third part that just briefly comes in at the end of each chorus. There's like a ooh, 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 and there's a third part that comes in. So I just did some session vocal work on that. I actually, during COVID, was getting a lot of session work. So just stuff like that where someone would be like, can you sing harmonies here or play keyboards on this or whatever. There's a band out of Sweden called Shameless that I've been recording a ton of stuff with, this glam band. And that's how I met Warrior Soul, and did stuff with them, and this band City Kids. I've been recording with tons of European bands, just backing vocals and keyboards for the most part.
I'm still here, guys. I just got to grab something right here.
Yeah. Cool. So, Jason, tell us how you got involved because you're on this as well.
It's similar to what Eddie said about, Joey reached out and kept reaching out. And
Never
and
stopped.
bless
persistent.
his heart,
Yeah, good dude.
because it's a no-brainer when you hear me sing that I love Dan McCafferty, so and
same here.
everything Nazareth does. I think I broke some blood vessels cutting that vocal track.
That stuff's hard, man. He hits
Yeah.
hella high notes, you know.
Changing times, yeah. And I was doing it sort of in between things because I was making about 3 other records at the same time, and between between the 4 of us here, I think I could have done a better job at it, but it was kind of like what Eddie said a second ago about how I just sang it on my computer and sent it in, and I've actually upgraded my recording gear since I made that recording, but
Yeah, me too.
yeah, I kind of had to because, and then this kind of trickles down back to Frank about how I was getting a lot of offers during the lockdown, right after that, so to speak, that we're just coming in cover songs and videos. I mean, I was learning how to, like use what's preloaded on my store-bought laptop to make a rock video clip for them to like edit into a full production. And I did one for these guys out of oh God, where are they from? Little Rock. And it was kind of these doom guys. Oh God, what are they called? Deadbird, I think is what they're called. And I did a Kiss song, and I have a full Gene costume, and they talked me into putting it on.
Oh yeah,
So I was wearing my full Gene and the wig and everything. It was ridiculous, but and the vocals for the track that we made the video for were, once again, back to, it's kind of all Joey's fault that I updated all my gear. I got a different mic and a preamp and stuff, but I'm glad I did because it's I'm glad that we're all busy, even if it's singing someone else's shit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm not usually a huge fan of tribute albums, but I think this one was really well done. And if you're going to tackle a classic, you better do it well. And I think
and
you guys all
it
did
had a
well.
member of Nazareth actually playing on it.
True.
So there's something to say about that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Joey worked hard on that, getting that together, obviously. So.
Yeah, and we should probably give a shout to Jeff Smith at Saucetex Records. I think, did he put this out? Yeah, I think so. Jeff Smith, who I'm a big fan of because of Sons of Hercules.
Right. Well, once again, a shout out to Joey for sort of being the magnet there and that kind of connected everyone. I want to shout out to Pincus. Pincus is on there, and he probably cut his stuff from Asheville. I think he's in Asheville now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Eddie, we've had Frank on the show before, and I think we've asked him this question, but we haven't had you before. So I wanted to ask you, what's the single most moment that got you hooked on rock and roll? What's the album or the concert or the television appearance or whatever that made you go, aha, this is what I want to do?
Well, it's appropriate for pushing this record because it's My Sharona. And that's, I heard that song on the radio, and it must have been 78 or 79, whenever it came out. I was a young boy. I don't know, it's 12 or something like that. And, maybe 11. I can't remember how old I was when I heard it, but it was instant. Like I instantly had to know who this was. I'd never been like that with an artist before. I liked music. I liked a lot of Elvis as a young kid, and was pretty into that. But it wasn't until I heard My Sharona where I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I remember hearing that song as well. We're probably all about the same age, and there was no denying that song, even though, my taste at that age probably leaned a little more heavy metal, but there's just no denying that song. It's just genius.
Well,
yeah, I started out as like a new wave
there.
kind of guy.
You started off as a new wave guy.
Yeah, I didn't really like heavy metal. I didn't like Kiss as a kid. I liked Blondie and the Knack and the Cars, and that sort of Devo even spoke to me more than like Kiss or Aerosmith or. Yeah, wow. I was late. I was late to the game. I didn't know who AC/DC was until Back in Black was already out. You know, it's like I heard "You Shook Me All Night Long" on the radio, and I thought, well, "This is a great song. This must be Rod Stewart." You know, we called up the radio station asking, "Who's that? What's that new Rod Stewart song?" And they're like, "What? And what about Shaking You All Night Long?" And like, "That's not Rod Stewart. That's AC/DC, you idiot." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know anything about the whole Bon Scott era, which now is." For me, is probably the greatest rock and roll achievement of all time. Is those AC/DC records with Bon Scott? I listen to them today, and they still sound just as good to me as they ever did.
I don't think I would know what to do when writing or performing a rock and roll song if it wasn't for Bon Scott in those years of AC/DC.
For sure. I mean, just the way he delivers those lyrics and how it's like AC/DC was amazing without Bon Scott, but with Bon Scott, the lyrics actually meant something.
Yeah.
Whereas now they don't mean anything, and it doesn't matter. Lyrics don't have to mean anything for the song to be great, but when they do actually mean something and the song is great, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Well, and Bon had a serpentine with his voice as well as his stage persona that matches no other. He's like this glam rock singer who's showing you what heavy metal is going to be. And I feel like David Lee Roth had that similar effect. And it's just rare when you have this, and short-lived. I mean, you could even say that about Roth to an extent that, there's this handful of years where fucking untouchable as to the influence that it's evil genius, what's going on with Bon, whether he's aware or not. And you could say the same about Roth. And there's only a few other people. Steven Tyler is one, and you could say Janis Joplin, which I guess those are intertwined anyway, because Steven wears her clothes, dresses like her, and tries to fucking sing like her too.
Yeah,
no one really ever puts that together. But put all that in a box, and that's kind of like what I wouldn't know what to do if it wasn't for stuff like that. And I really think it. I probably heard the first Van Halen around the first time I heard Let There Be Rock. So I'm hearing this shit going, holy moly, these guys are a genesis of something. And my young mind wasn't able to say the word genesis yet, but yeah.
Yeah.
Van Halen was the band that got me into heavy metal for sure. And
Gateway.
I feel bad for Eddie Van Halen and his legacy because it was so tarnished by every other guitar player that wanted to be like him. Just all that 80s wankery was born from his
influence,
genius.
Yeah. But I think that God rest his soul. I'm sure he's resting easy because he may have inspired a bunch of copycats, but nobody ever came close, and we all know that. So,
sure.
but I do like I like your point, Eddie. There's music. You were talking about Bon Scott and the lyrics, and how that's just the icing on the cake of an otherwise already great band. And I think there's a couple others like that where even if the lyrics weren't great, I would still listen to the music. But because the lyrics are so great, that's the icing on the cake. And you would have to throw Lemmy from Motorhead in there. You'd have to throw Phil from Thin Lizzy in there. We've referenced Bon Scott. We've referenced Steven Tyler. But when those guys or girls, whoever, is able to put some wordplay on top of some killer riffs, that's just golden, man. That's what makes it, shine and rise above all the other stuff.
For sure.
I think, and not to blow smoke, but I think there's some of that on this record, this motherfucking rock and roll record. Like I said, you can't take it back. There's something in those lyrics that speaks to me.
I like how when Dave says the title, both of these guys light up like a Christmas tree. They say motherfucking rock and roll. I see both of these guys.
We're both big fans of cursing. There's no doubt about that.
I think they did this on purpose because they knew that every review they're going to chuckle to themselves every time they see that in print or they hear somebody speak it. They're those motherfuckers. They have to say motherfucker.
Evil genius. Yeah. See, there it is. The evil genius.
Exactly.
Is there. Yeah,
no doubt.
So, let's talk briefly about your respective bands. What's next for, if anything, Streetwalkin Cheetahs, and what's next, if anything, for Supersuckers?
As far as the Cheetahs go, we put out a record back in March called One More Drink, and it's available in all the formats that people buy music these days. It's vinyl and CD, but it's also on all the digital platforms and stuff. We did a bunch of gigs over the summer when things kind of started to open up. Eddie and I were doing some acoustic gigs sort of as the record was getting finished up, and right before our record came out, we did a bunch of gigs together. And then right at the end of the summer, we got to play this cool festival called the Socal Hoedown with the Supersuckers and the Cheetahs and Nashville Pussy and Throw Rag and Fishbone and so many of the bands we've been talking about here today. And then since then, we've just taken the rest of the year off, and then we're going to get back into action next year and probably do another record and just do more shows.
What about Supersuckers, Eddie?
Well, we're just going to get back at it. I guess we're going to start up next year. We had just put out a brand new record when COVID shut everything down. So our whole process sort of got interrupted. You know, my process is, you know, make up new songs, record them, go out and play them till you're sick of them, and then new ones start coming up again. You know, it's like, and now I'm just sort of sitting on this last batch of tunes and never had gotten to really get sick of them yet. So, but you know, I've already started kind of making up new songs, which is a good thing. Is yeah, every time I finish a record, I worried, okay, that's it. I don't have any more songs in me. There's no way. The world does not need another rock and roll song. But you know, more always wind up coming. So that's been the blessing of my life. So
the world always needs another rock and roll song. Any chance you guys would tour to promote this record? Tour together?
Well, we've done.
Yeah, there's a chance.
Yeah, we've done shows together. But the ones we did where we played material off this record were acoustic because it was still sort of at the end of COVID. So it wasn't really functional or functionally possible to like get a band on the road. Now that Eddie just got off the road with the Supersuckers, right?
Yeah, you were just in Austin on Halloween.
And all the shows went off without a hitch, right? No cancellations, people having a good time. No one fucking, passed out and, died of COVID. So
it was a dip our toes in the water sort of experience. We just booked like 10 shows to just check it out.
And it went well, right? So
yeah, it did.
That bodes well for more Supersuckers. Our dip our toe in the water shows went well too. So I think as we're looking at next year, all this stuff seems more possible. So whether Eddie and I do more shows together or make another record together, it's really more just how our schedules and stuff. Normally Eddie plays like 230 shows a year, so it's hard to pin him down.
Yeah,
it was much easier for me to pin him down over this last year. So we'll just see how the next year plays out.
I'm like a shark. I got to keep swimming to survive. So
I know the Supersuckers are always on the road.
Well, and then they'll do days off, and then he'll fill them with acoustic shows on his own. So I'm like, the Supersuckers played 210 shows this year. Eddie played 238 shows. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, well, I hope that things allow you guys to get out and promote this record a little bit, touring wise. I would love to go see this stuff live.
I would love to get Brian Forsythe on guitar. I would like to basically take me, Brian, Eddie, Jeff the sax player, and Mike Sessa, and that would be a cracking band, man.
I bet Brian would do it.
I bet Brian would do it.
Yeah.
And I know Mike Sessa would do it. It really just becomes, honestly, it really becomes like, it's all fucking how much money we're going to lose doing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And back in the day, you'd look at a tour and it's about how much money you're going to make. Now it's more like how much are we going to lose? So I think it just becomes like, hey, do we both have some time? And can we do it for the kind of money we get? Because it's not the Suckers, it's not the Cheetahs. Hopefully it's someone that values both of our careers goes, oh, it's even better. It's both those guys and we could get decent money. But, on the other hand, someone might go, I don't know, it's like a new band to me. And, is it worth it for us to go roll out to Middle America to make, a couple $100 to do a bar? Like, probably not. But if we could, maybe do a South by Southwest run or a little West Coast run, something that, makes some financial sense and we're not just going to lose our ass on it, then yeah, it definitely sounds fun, especially if we could get all those great guys and put together like a dope little super group, man. That would
I
be
was going to
great.
say it could be you could sort of like look at the finance end of it being a vacation.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And whatever you
Right.
lost would have been like, oh, let's call this margaritas and let's call this tacos and let's call, and then you try to just write it off, whatever. You know what I'm
I
saying?
will say Eddie's Topo Chico bill. Your rider on Topo Chico must be out of control this way. This guy
It
eats
is.
a lot.
It's insane. Yeah.
I would like to see a Supersuckers, Streetwalkin Cheetahs, and Broken Teeth gig, and then you and Eddie, Frank and Eddie, somewhere like doing a acoustic motherfucking rock and roll sort of intermission kind of vibe.
Or
Pull
maybe
that
a
all
way.
together.
I mean, maybe a way that it would make sense now that you mentioned that, because I hadn't really thought about that, would just be like you do. I mean, to do a Spaghetti and Frank thing would be we just put the Cheetahs and the Supersuckers on tour, and in the middle we do like a little Spaghetti and Frank
Exactly.
set, essentially.
Bloody up the
As
middle.
long as we're already both out there in vans on the road, just take advantage of that shit. Just add Brian Forsythe and give him the extra space in the van, and now we got a tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And when you get to Austin, add Broken Teeth to the bill.
Well, of course, it goes without saying.
Yes, please.
As you well know, we cover. The Cheetahs have done a Broken Teeth song, so I'm well documented in my love for the Jason McMaster's catalog.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. And Broken Teeth has done a gig with the Supersuckers, I believe, at Red Eyed Fly, probably going on 17 years ago or something crazy.
That's right. That's right.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Is
right.
Red Eye Fly still not? That's not around anymore.
No,
is
it's
it?
not there. It's
Nothing's around anymore.
no,
Nothing's around.
Except Casino El Camino. I was there last night, and it's still there with the jukebox. So
Love that.
Red River has Valhalla, and that's about it. I think Will McCabe's and Headhunters and Red Eye Fly.
Emos is around, but it moved to a different venue, right?
Well, Emos is like a venue. It's not a bar anymore.
Right.
It's like a venue. It holds like,
a theater.
1,300 people now or something, and it's cool. It sounds great. Middle, like B level bands, like here you go, like Testament. That Bay Area thrash tour was just scheduled to go through there. They did cancel, but it was Testament, Exodus, and
Death Angel.
Death Angel.
God damn, that's a
bands
lot
like that. Tours like that go through there, and
that's an uncomfortable amount of heavy metal on one night.
well, people like to be uncomfortable when they listen.
Yeah.
No doubt.
The idea.
Frank, tell us real quick about your T-shirt, and then we'll let you guys go. For people that are just listening and not watching, Frank is wearing a Smack T-shirt. Smack, of course, was a underground band from Finland, sort of a glam, garagey kind of thing. Explain and tell us how that shirt ended up on your back.
Well, I was born, I get a headache.
Yeah. They were a cool band from the 80s and early 90s from Finland that were just after Hanoi Rocks. And they did they did 4 or 5 records, but the first 2 records came out here through like a subsidiary of Enigma Records, which at the time was a pretty big indie. So those first 2 records, Rattlesnake Bite and the first one with Good Morning Headache, were like, you could kind of find those. And they were somewhere between the sort of glamminess of, or, cool glam, not like Pretty Boy Floyd glam, but like they were sort of like that Alice Cooper-y kind of Hanoi Rocks glam mixed with the Stooges vibe. And I always was a big fan of them. And at the end of their career, they moved from Finland to LA, and I actually got to see them a few times. Sam Yaffa from Hanoi was playing bass for them at that time, and they played a couple clubs. And their guitar player, Rane, he lived in LA for a long time and actually ended up in the Hangmen for a while, if you guys remember that. Oh, wow. And Rane, I think, was his name. And so the band broke up and the singer passed away. And years later, I got in touch, there was a Smack tribute album being put together in Finland. And I somehow got in touch. Yeah, of course. And I somehow got in touch with the guy, and I don't remember if I reached out to him or he reached out to me, but somehow we were in touch. And the Cheetahs did a song. We did Criminal. And then Frank and Dino Show, which was my acoustic group at the time with Dino from the Cheetahs, we did another song. The name's escaping me. But So then that guy ended up putting out this book, like a big coffee table smack book in Finland, of course. So it's all in Finnish. And then he contacted me and interviewed me for the book. And so then he sent me the book and I ordered the t-shirt. And it's just funny because like you can open the book and you see that my name's in there, but I of course have no idea what I said or anything. It's all in Finnish. It's just, Frank Meyer, blah, 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 Frank and Dino show.
Couldn't you call George from Rhino Bucket to translate?
Yeah, that's true. I could do that. But anyway, so I'm a fan and, it's just cool that there's been a little bit of a resurgence and they were definitely one of those underground bands. And, we're all big punk rock metal fans here. Like, I think something about the generation we came up with is like there would be these underground bands that your friends hadn't heard of that you'd somehow stumble onto, whether it was punk or metal or glam or whatever. And like it just blew your mind that how can Smack be so great and how can Hanoi Rocks be so great and they're not the biggest band in the world. And so I would get even more passionate, I feel like, for those like long lost bands, those bands that never made it. Cause like, of course, everyone likes Van Halen. Don't get me wrong. I love Van Halen, but like, it's not special to like Van Halen. It's special to love Jason and the Scorchers or the Hangmen or Smack. You know what I mean? Because like, it's such a small, when you run into someone with a Smack shirt, you're like, I know I can talk to that dude. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
Well, that's what rock and roll is. It's a tribe, and when you find things that are speaking your language, you look for other people that know the language, and that's just a normal pheromone, right?
Right. Yeah. And rock t-shirts have always been a great way, and baseball hats, you know what I mean, to just tell the world, like, or tell the people that you think might give a shit. Because most people look at, your shirt and go like, whatever. And every once in a while someone's like, got you.
Well, they don't know what it is, and if they don't,
but we all know that Dave's wearing a Rhino Bucket shirt, and we all know that Brian Forsythe from Kix was in Rhino Bucket, and that Eddie's produced because we're all part of the tribe, like you said.
Right. Welcome to the Nerd Fest.
And
it's pretty nerdy pursuit.
And Faster covers the Supersuckers song.
They do.
For their set, yeah.
What song do they do?
What is it? Shut Up and Rock or what? No, that's the. What song do they do of yours, Eddie?
Pretty Fucked Up.
Pretty Fucked Up. That's it. Yeah. And I think Slim Tender actually. Does he do lead vocals on it, or he does co-vocals?
That sounds very on brand for him. Yeah.
That sounds like Danny, right?
That sounds very on brand for Danny to be singing that song.
What a great guy Danny is.
Yeah,
that guy's hysterical, man.
Yeah.
I one time was at a studio, and I heard a Faster Pussycat song being played, and I go in the room, and there's the whole band rehearsing, and Tammy hadn't shown up yet. Like they got there an hour beforehand and set up, and were running through a couple obscure songs that they were going to do, like Bottle in Front of Me or something that they hadn't normally done. So they showed up a little early to rehearse, and I kind of peeked my head in because I know all those dudes, and I'm like, "What up?" And Danny's like, "What up, Frank Meyer?" And like out of nowhere from behind his amp, he pulled a cooler out, and like suddenly like vodka, tequila, mixers, a fucking bag of ice, a thing of cups, like out of nowhere, he had a full bar, and I had a giant cocktail in my hand. It was like lickety split. And before I was like, wow, thanks, they just went in the next song. He was just like, here you go, bro, here's a drink, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, 2, 3, 4. I was like, wow, this guy is incredible.
No wonder Tammy keeps him around.
No doubt.
Tammy's been sober for many years, but
and not Danny.
Yeah, I
don't know how that works. Actually,
I know that's got to be a
Tammy stays on the wagon.
I think Tammy likes being surrounded by a little bit of chaos. It's sort of like Howard Stern has always been a straight dude, but he surrounds himself with Artie Langs and Sam Kinnisons, and because he loves the spectacle of someone else being out of control. He just doesn't actually want to be out of control himself. So I think Tammy a long time ago kicked all the drugs and the hard partying and kind of got his shit together. But I think he loves having Danny around because it kind of reminds him of his like former self, you know?
Yeah. Well, man, you guys, thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon. This album is great, by the way. Motherfucking Rock and Roll people need to go check this out. Eddie Spaghetti and Frank Meyer joining forces for the first time on a full-length album. And I love it. So it's been in heavy rotation at my house, and people need to go check it out. Jason, you got anything?
Person of impeccable taste, David.
Thank you.
He definitely is. If Metal Dave likes your shit, you're doing something right, because he really does like a lot of fantastic rock music, and it's not just glam or punk or heavy metal or thrash or whatever. It really is. He does have a good a decent throw at what's good shit. So
I
Well,
think I
I
think
was just
I
I
think
was just
some of
gonna
that
tell
just
you.
I think some of that just comes from, number one, being a fan, but my background, I guess, as a writer or a journalist, I have my ears are always looking for something
hmm.
that's a little bit above average, because I feel like I have I've kind of set the bar a little high for myself. So if you're on my radar, you're doing something right, in my opinion. So, but that's just
Yeah,
me.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I love that.
I was just going to tell you guys the record is on Kitten Robot Records, so you can pick it up either through their website or just however you buy digital music. But it's also on vinyl and CD, and I think we were both really happy to see it come out on vinyl.
Yeah.
These days, to me, I still am old school enough to feel like if I can't hold it somehow physically,
Hmm. It
is it
doesn't
a real
exist.
record? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, oh yeah, we put this out digitally. I'm like, okay.
That's why when we were setting up this show, I reached out to your PR folks, and I said, because Frank sent me the album digitally, and I had it on my phone, and that's the first time I heard it. This is how good this record is. I sat and listened to it from start to finish on my phone because I couldn't shut it off. I was like, "Oh my God, this is
Which
good."
is not
That's
really the best way to take in a record.
No,
I
it's
want
not
to
at
throw
all.
that in
But
there.
that's what I'm saying. It's like and I
Sizzle,
rarely,
sizzle
yeah.
through my phone.
And I don't have a spare 30 minutes for anything. But I'm like, hey, this is really good. And song 1 is over, song 2 kicks. I'm like, oh, that's good. Song 3, oh, that's good. And then I knew we were going to do this episode with you guys, and I was like, I reached out to your PR folks, and Frank, thank you for getting this sent my way. But I was like, does anybody even make CDs anymore? That's what my email said. I was like, I don't know if you guys even do CDs, but if you do, I like the physical product because I listen to it in my car while I'm driving around and that sort of thing. So yeah, they sent me the CD, and I'm always happy to have the tangible product in my hand versus a digital download or whatever.
Well,
So
for
to
guys
get
like
the
us who play live shows too, downloads are cool, but you can't sell a download really at a merch table at a gig. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So having some physical version of your piece of music you spend all this time and money on or whatever, you got to
it
have
doesn't
something you can
it also
hand your
doesn't
fans.
it doesn't feel very cool when you're the front man and you're basically selling downloads via the microphone. You're like, oh, everyone, don't forget to download our record when y'all can download it right now. Go ahead, break out your phones together, and you go to www.
I don't even like, dude. I don't know about you, Eddie, but I don't even like shouting out my social medias at a gig. I feel like there's nothing dorkier than being like, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook. It's like so stupid. Like, I just assume that they're going to find us that route. And I might go like, oh, we've got our new album at the merch table.
Yeah, that's the way.
I can't get into like plugging my social media from the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, pushing. That's what I'm saying. Pushing a download is I can't even find the right curse word.
Yeah.
I'm just laughing thinking about it.
Anybody in the audience like social media? Yeah.
Repeat after me, everybody. Download.
To the people on the left say face, and the people on the right say book. Hey, people in the middle say hashtag. That shit ain't cool, man. Shit ain't
it's
cool.
not.
You can't do it.
I can't imagine Bon Scott doing that.
No, you just got to be like, look, ladies and gentlemen, we're the Supersuckers. Good night. And you figure the rest out.
Yeah. And they will if they're at your show. If they're at a Supersuckers gig.
Speaking
or a
of
Cheetahs
that,
gig.
and holding, Dave's holding the CD. What about something that's bigger? vinyl.
Yeah, they said.
Yeah, we have vinyl. We have
That-
vinyl.
Yeah, but
Vinyl.
you can get that from the
Kitten
label.
Robot
Kitten
Records.
Robot.
We just didn't send that to the likes of Dave. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
my God, we can't just,
Right.
we can't
I'm
just
not,
hand these
I'm not
things
that
away.
high up. Yeah, I'm not that high
I mean,
up.
Well-
we're not just throwing these things out to the general public
Yeah.
or anything.
I'm not Rolling Stone or
No,
Howard Stern.
No.
I'm still waiting for it to arrive, I guess.
Well, he can send it to you on your phone.
Right.
The
Yeah.
vinyl, yeah.
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 The-
I'll send
the
you-
link-
I'll
the
send you a
link to
rip of the vinyl. Yeah.
Jason, you got anything to add to this
I
conversation?
just want to say it's been an excellent episode on a Sunday afternoon, once again on the Talk Louder podcast. Thank you guys for being here with us today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Eddie, it was good to see you. And Frank, it's always a pleasure to see your shining face.
Always.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Probably the most prolific man in rock and roll, Frank Meyer. I can't even keep up with all of his music and his books and whatever he's
I think
doing.
he wrote 5 books during the episode.
Yeah, I think so. I saw him taking notes.
If
Yeah.
it makes you feel any better, I can't keep up with it anymore either.
Right. Well,
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'm Metal Dave with my co-host Jason McMaster. I'd like to thank our special guest Eddie Spaghetti from the Supersuckers, Frank Meyer from the Streetwalkin Cheetahs. Their new album is called Motherfuckin Rock N Roll, Spaghetti and Frank on Kitten Robot Records. Go check it out. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast.